What's up guys, this is Brent with Western Equipment, and in this video I'm going to be telling you all about this John Deere 4052M. So let's start out by breaking down the model number. Now within the John Deere tractor lineup, we start with a 1 series, moving up to a 2 series, 3 series, 4 series, and then on up into the 5, 6, 7, 8s, and 9s. So the first digit that you're going to see here on the model number, the 4, is going to indicate that this is in the 4 series tractor. So we're still going to be in the compact tractor lineup. Once we move up in to the 5 series of tractors, now you've moved up into the utility tractor lineup, and then moving on up we get into the ag and large ag tractors. Now the next 3 digits behind that 4 are going to be our horsepower indicator. Now this is going to be actually closer to a 51 horsepower rather than a 52, but these digits here are always used to get close to that horsepower of the tractor. Now the M back here is going to be the trim level. So unlike lots of John Deere equipment, we are going to have different trim levels within this 4 series. This one is going to be an M. Then we also have the R series tractors in the 4 series lineup. But you could also have in different lineups, you can have an E series, which is going to be your economy level. So your M is sort of your mid-spec level, and then your R is going to be that more premium level tractor. Now within the M series, we'll talk a little bit here about some of the standard features that you're going to see on this tractor. This tractor is going to come with power steering. It is going to have MFWD or front wheel assist or 4-wheel drive, depending on how you are familiar with that term. This is going to have the differential lock. It is going to have 2 different transmission options, one being the hydrostatic transmission, which we have here on this tractor. The other is going to be a 12-12 power reverser, meaning that we have 3 ranges, 4 gears, and then a forward and a reverse for each one of those gears, so that making it a 12x12 transmission. So from there, what we're going to do is go ahead and hop underneath the engine here, take a look at it, talk about the engine and all of the service points on this tractor as well. Now to get underneath the hood, we are going to need our key or some other pointy object to go right into this hole that is right here below the top of the hood. We're simply going to push that in, and then we are able to raise up on the hood, which is going to have a nice latching system here. So it's going to keep that up and out of the way whenever you're trying to do things underneath the hood here. Now, as we can see from the top of the hood, the only thing that we're actually going to have really good access to is going to be our air filter. Then we also have our overflow tank here for our radiator, and then of course our radiator cap. Now to get to our other components or to do any type of maintenance to this tractor, we can remove these side panels very easily. There's going to be 1 clip right here on the side that we simply have to flip out and then twist, and that allows this panel to pull out this way, and then we will pull forward, and that releases that panel to where we can open that up and get to all of our other service points. So I'm going to go ahead and go around to the other side, do the same thing there, release that panel, pull it forward, and then pull it off, and now we are able to get to all of our service points. So over here, starting on the left hand side, some of the things that you're going to see, or you're going to have access to such things as your starter. You're also going to have your turbocharger on this side. Up top here is going to be our big DPF filter, which I'll talk more about here in a minute. And then below that, we are also going to have our alternator, and below our alternator will be our 2 hydraulic pumps. Then if we move around to the front here, this is where our battery compartment is going to be. Now, the battery does sit down low here, but I will show you that we can remove 1 clip here, and then we have 2 clips on the bottom on each side of the housing that this battery sits in. And once we unlatch both sets of these clips on the bottom of that housing, then we can come to the front And like I said, disconnect this one clip here that goes to our headlights, and then this whole front housing is able to lift off. We can lift that completely up and off to be able to get to our battery to do that service. Now over here on the right hand side, some of the components that we're going to be able to see, for one, we're going to be able to get better access here to our air filter. It's going to have a dust cap here that we need to know about, that way that whenever we get the chance to stop and blow this machine out, we are letting that dust out of the dust cap. Then down below our air filter a little ways, we are going to have our engine oil fill, and then down below that we will have our fuel filter down here at the bottom. This is going to have a water release petcock down here, and it does have the water separator bowl here. It will have a fuel shutoff right up here on the top of that filter housing. Then we will have our oil filter just back behind it a little ways, and then also our engine oil dipstick. Now, once we've done any service or maintenance or work that we need to do on this machine, and we're going back on with our side panels, we need to do a couple of things first. For one, if you have done service on the battery, we need to reclamp that housing for the battery, because if not, you will not be able to clamp it once you put your side panel back on, because it does cover up those clamps. Now, when we're going back on, a couple of things we need to keep in mind is this tab here at the bottom has a hook that it will go in, and then we have these two pins here on the back that have holes here on the side that they will go in, that we need to make sure and get those seated in place before we can set our tab here on top. All right, then once we get everything lined up and slid back into place, then we can put on that front clamp, twist it, and lock it down. Now, before we hop in the operator station of this tractor, let's talk a little bit about the loader and the tires on this machine. Now, the loader is going to be an option on the 4052M, but oftentimes you are going to see the 400E loader attached to one of these machines, being as that the compact utility tractor class is going to be very well known for using them for loader work. So on this 4052M, like I said, we have this 400E. So some of the things about the 400E, for one, it is going to be a solid mount loader, meaning that it is hard mounted to the machine. It is going to have the John Deere quick style coupler here in the front, making it easy to switch out between front attachments. So right now what you'll see on it and what comes standard on this loader is going to be a 73-inch bucket. You'll also notice that there is a nice cutting edge there on the bucket that is welded on. So if you do happen to wear out that cutting edge, you would be able to weld on a new cutting edge onto that bucket. So keep that in mind. Now, some of the specs for this loader, it is going to have a lifting height of 112 inches. And then you're going to have a lifting capacity, and this is 24 inches out from the pivot point. This is the safe spec that I like to give, being as that most of the time our weight is not going to be at the pivot. And if you're not familiar what the pivot is the point on the loader right down here in the very bottom point here where the bucket attaches to the loader arms. This is the pivot, and being as that this is going to be the spot with the most strength, they give a higher rating for lifting capacity here at the pivot. So we like to measure this 24 inches out away from the pivot, being as that we may have a load on. This load of dirt that we would have in this bucket is obviously not going to be directly on that pivot. It's going to be out front. If we have pallet forks on, hay spear, whatever those things are, most of that load is going to be out front. So that lifting capacity at full height, 24 inches out from the pivot, is going to be 760 pounds. Now, if we're only lifting, say, 5 feet off the ground, that goes up significantly, closer to 2,300 pounds. So this all depends on your application of what you're lifting, how high you're lifting it, and where you're going. But the other thing that you really need to keep in mind is that if we are going to be doing heavy duty loader work with these tractors, we also need to make sure that the machine is properly ballasted. Now, there's many ways we can do this. One is going to be putting fluid in the tires. Two would be adding steel, weights to the rear wheels of this tractor, or we could add on a ballast box at the rear. But we need to make sure, depending on the type of lifting that we're doing, that we do have enough weight here in the rear to accommodate the weight that we're going to have here in the front, so that we make sure that we are properly ballasted and being safe when moving those different loads. So definitely keep that in mind, as most of these tractors will not be ballasted whenever you go to purchase them. So keep in mind if you're doing that loader work to make sure and get that done. Now, like I said, also talking here about tires. Now, what we're going to have on this machine is going to be the R4 industrial tires. So these are going to kind of be your in-between tires. Now, the other two tire styles that you can have on this machine would be R1s, which are going to be your normal ag tires that have more of that V pattern, a little sharper, a little deeper grooves here on the front and the rear. Or we could also put turf tires on this tractor, which is going to be the small notched patterns. It's going to be very easy on the lawns, grasses. If you're using this tractor in a situation where you want to be really easy on that turf, then turf tires is an option. But here what you see is going to be the R4 industrials. So now we'll go ahead and hop up into the operator station here, and first thing that I'd point out, as you saw me use, is you are going to have grab handles on this machine, making it to where you can have those 3 points of contact when you get in. So it'd be one here on the handle, one on the steering wheel, or maybe the loader arm here, and then a foot on the step, making it 3 points of contact. So very easy to get in and out of this machine. You do have enough room over here on the right to get out if you needed to, but there is not going to be a step over here on the right hand side. So let's go ahead and talk about controls. We'll start over here on the left hand side, and before we get there, let's go ahead and point out our big storage compartment here on the left hand side. Now, this is oftentimes where we're going to find our operator manuals, but this has a nice large 3-slotted cubby here, so you can put in all kinds of stuff, tools you need to keep on board, gloves, extra parts, whatever those things may be. Now, controls over here on the left hand side. Starting here at the back, we will have our 4-wheel drive engagement. So right here we are pushed down, which means that we are only in 2-wheel drive. If we need to go into that 4-wheel drive, it's as simple as pulling up on this T-handle to put this machine into 4-wheel drive. Now, next to that is going to be our range selector. So as you can see here, we have 3 different ranges on this tractor: A, B, and C. So A is going to be our low gear, B is our mid gear that we're going to be using most of the time, and then C is our road gear. And then obviously we do have a neutral position here as well. And then right in front of that, we are going to have the automotive style parking brake. So it is as easy as pulling up, pushing down on the button, releasing that all the way down to release that parking brake. And then to set it, it's as simple as pulling it up till we get to the top of that brake. Now, right down here to my left at my feet, you are going to have a set of turning brakes. Now, if you're not familiar with tractor terminology and don't know what turning brakes are, as you can see right here, I've got a little lever that I can pull up, or I can push down to lock those brakes together. So if you're an experienced tractor operator, you'll know that sometimes we're in those tight situations where we need to get turned a little tighter, so we can separate those brakes and lock either one tire or the other there in the rear to give a little sharper turn. Now, for most people, we're just going to simply keep these in the locked position and use this just like a brake on our car. That way we're stopping both wheels at the same time. But keep in mind, if you do have the tractor with the hydrostatic transmission like we have here, as soon as we let off of one of our drive pedals, which I'm going to show in just a minute, this tractor will start to come to that stop. And then our brake is kind of only going to be for emergencies if we keep rolling or if we're in neutral. So now moving up here onto the dash, first thing we're going to see to our left hand side is going to be our main control panel here. And so if I were to get my key out here, pop that in, turn the tractor to the on position, we will see it light up. Now, what we'll have up here is going to be, at the top here will be our turn signal buttons. So obviously if we press 1, it'll be our left turn signal, then we have our right turn signal, and then here in the middle has a little picture of gauges. This is going to be the button that we use to cycle through the different things here on our display panel. So right through there. And then below that, we are going to have our DPF buttons here. Now, these are going to be for that diesel particulate filter that I talked about. So these machines do have a regen system on them. These are final tier 4 emissions engines, meaning that they do have to have a diesel particulate filter. meaning that whenever that exhaust is going through the system, any of those particles that could be put out into the air are being caught in that filter. And so from time to time, that filter has to go through and burn off those particles. So when it is in that mode, it will tell you that it's doing that. This is always going to be set to automatic unless you change one of these buttons here, which I highly suggest to never do. We have one here to the right, which is going to be to turn the diesel particulate filter off or to turn the regen system off. And we never want to do that, because then if we do that and we don't turn it back on, we could have problems with our engine. So make sure and just leave this button alone here. Now the one over to the right has the regen button with a P next to it. So if that symbol flashes up here on your screen, or if your screen here tells you to do a parked regen, you would need to go ahead and park the tractor, hit this button, and then that would allow the tractor to do a parked regen. Also, if you ever get this type of code, it's a good idea to go ahead and pick up the phone and call your local dealer just to say, hey, my tractor is telling me to do a parked regen. You may have some codes show up. If you do, definitely let them know so they can diagnose that. But most of the time, this regeneration process will just happen on its own. Your tractor will tell you when it's doing it. So just continue to run your tractor like normal until it says that it's done. And then your tractor is basically taking care of itself. Now, also here in the middle between those two buttons, we are going to have our hazard button here. So of course, if we hit those just like on our car, our hazard lights will be flashing here on the sides. And then below that, we do have our light switch here that is a 3-position switch where we can turn those lights on or turn on all of our lights around the machine. Now, moving up onto our display panel, we've talked about this a little bit here. You are going to have numerous different warning lights coming up. Right now we have a park light and a battery symbol showing that our key is on. Also, whenever you have this on, most of the time you're going to get an oil light flash until you turn this on. And then of course here in the middle, we do have our display panel, which I just showed that we can go through with that center button on the top of our control panel here to the left. Right now we're showing the hour meter. We can show what our PTO is running at, the soot level of our filter. We can show our exhaust filter there. There is our engine hours, gross speed, motion match, default, load match on, and then these are going to be the vehicle hours like we talked about. Now also here on our display, we are going to have an RPM gauge and then also a heat gauge, as we can see here. And then like I said, once we turn this machine on, if we were to have any other issues, you may have other lights and things that show up. So we'll go ahead and turn this back off. Then over to our right, we are going to have our throttle. Very easy just to raise this up and down to that desired RPMs that we need. Then over to our right down here on our feet, we are going to have our forward and reverse pedal. Now, if this was a 12x12 transmission tractor, you would not have these pedals. You would have a clutch instead, and then you would have a left-hand reverser, but we don't have that here. So on the hydrostat, we just have a forward and reverse pedal. Very easy to run. And then up above that, we are going to have our loader joystick. This is going to be just like any other loader that you've ever ran if you're familiar with a tractor. If you're not, you'll have a set of instructions down here on the bottom that'll tell you. But right here, we would pull down for up, up for down, left to curl the bucket, right to drop the bucket. Then right below that on the loader lever, we're also going to have a loader lock. Now what this is going to do is if we push this in, this is going to lock just the lever itself so that we don't accidentally bump that. Maybe we're doing service on the tractor or we're in a position where we need that loader to stay in the position that it's in. It's a good idea to go ahead and lock this out. Just keep in mind, this does not lock the hydraulics. So if you happen to have a hydraulic leak, that loader still could leak down, but you're not going to have any quick motions by accidentally bumping this lever with that loader lock on. Then we just want to make sure that we're releasing that for whenever we need to use that loader to make sure that it is open and ready to use. Now, right in between our feet here, before we move to the right-hand side, we are going to have a seat adjustment here. So we can slide this seat back. We can also slide this forward. We're also going to have our rate of drop knob right below that. Now, rate of drop is going to deal with our 3-point arms, which we'll go over here in a minute. That's going to be the speed in which it will let these arms go down whenever we are releasing those with the lever. And then also to the left of that, we are going to have our differential lock. So if we need to lock both of these rear wheels in, this is going to be a lot like a car. Most of our power is coming from one wheel normally. In case we get in those situations that are very sticky and we need to lock those in, we can simply reach back, push that pedal down, and that is going to lock in our rear differential. Now over here to the right on our upper console, we'll notice first thing we do have a nice large beverage holder there. Then we have a bunch of open switches that you can see along with our PTO switch. But as you can see, a ton of open slots here for extra switches. So this tractor can have tons of attachments added to it. Let's say extra lights. Maybe we have attachments that we're going to put at the rear that require a switch to run them. We do have plenty of open spots here to add those switches. And then we're also, like I said, gonna have that PTO switch. Now the PTO switch on these tractors is a little different than what we're gonna see on a lawnmower if that's what you're used to. These are gonna be a two-position or a three-position switch rather. We're going to have off as it is here, then we're going to have where the PTO is on, but then we have to hold this button down to actually engage the PTO, and then to turn it off we'd go back to the off position. So just know that if you are trying to start your PTO and you only click at one spot, all that does is send electricity to the PTO. We have to actually hold this switch down to engage and actually make the shaft spin. Now also next to that, we are going to have a light here for our transmission heat. So if we're having issues back there in the transmission where we are having excess heat, you do have a warning light here, and this is going to tell you to go ahead and check your operator manual. Now down below here to the right hand side, mainly what we have here is going to be our 3-point raise and lower. So we do have a lever here that is going to allow us to drop those 3-point arms or raise those up. And then we also have a locking mechanism. So if we're using a certain attachment, say a box blade, a grater, different things like that, where we have a certain depth that we want that 3-point to go back down to every time, then we have that lock that we can simply set in place there, and that will catch and make sure to keep those PTO arms at that certain depth. Now, moving to the rear of the tractor, there is a lot going on back here that we need to go over. So for one, we are going to have our rollover protection system. Now, this is the system that's put in place as a roll bar. This is going to be the protection that keeps you safe if you happen to have those upset or overturned situations. If this tractor starts to tip or roll, if we're working on those side of those hills or any type of uneven terrain, we need to make sure and have this up and into place, and then also have our seat belt on to make sure to keep us in the tractor if we have those accidents. But as you can see, there is another notch here to where if we're working around low-lying trees, things like that, things where we're going to be on solid flat ground, we can go ahead and lower this down to get this out of our way. Now also here at the rear, we are going to have our fuel fill, which is nice. A lot of times these fuel fills on other tractors will be up on the hood, but this one is here at the rear, making it easy to fill this up. And if we have any of those spill situations, that mess will not be up there on the front of our tractor. Now this is going to be a 15-gallon diesel tank here, and it is going to have that tethered lid so that we don't lose it. Now also here at the back, like we showed in the front there on the operator station, we are going to have our turn lights here, and then also our brake lights as well. So just make sure to know about those. Then also we have our SMV symbol here. It is very important that if we're going to be moving this tractor anywhere around on any streets at all, that we do have a SMV symbol here that stands for slow moving vehicle, just to let people know that, hey, obviously they should know if you're on a tractor, it is going to be a lot slower, but make sure that that is in place. And then we have two main service points here at the rear that are very important, and that's going to be our transmission fill, which is right here, and then also our transmission dipstick right here. And then underneath on the left hand side here, just right in front of our rear wheel here underneath, is going to be our two hydraulic filters, one for the transmission and one for the hydraulic system overall. Now also here at the rear, very important is that we do have a category 1 3-point hitch. So we do have a top link and two lower 3-point arms. Now the lifting capacity at the rear of this tractor is going to be 2,500 pounds. So just know that whatever implements we're looking at need to be category 1 for 1 point. And if we're hooking up to a PTO driven implement, it is going to have to be 540, as our PTO shaft on this machine is going to be a 540 PTO shaft. And then also we need to be at that 2,500 pound or lower mark if we're going to be lifting these up. Now, the nice thing about this 3-point is that it is adjustable in many ways. As we see here, we can adjust our top link to 3 different points. Obviously, our top link here is also going to be adjustable right here with the screw top to be able to change the length of that top link. Now on our bottom arms here, we are going to have these turnbuckle systems to make sure to keep these from swaying out and into the tires. And then also you are going to see that we do have the option to make these bottom 3-point arms a floating style 3-point arm with a change of this pin right here. We'd be able to turn this pin, and right here in the slots, that'll allow these arms to glide up and down within that slot. And then of course we do have a drawbar here at the back. So any of those implements that you need to be able to pull with the drawbar, you do have that capability with this tractor. So to finish this off, let's just go over a few of the specs here and do a little bit of a recap. So on the 4052M, we have a 4-cylinder 51 horsepower Yanmar engine. Now, along with the 51 horsepower here at the engine, that is going to translate to 39 horsepower there at the rear at the PTO. So whenever you're looking for rear attachments, just remember that you are going to be putting out 39 horsepower at the rear in the PTO, so keep that in mind. Now, as far as some of the fluid capacities, now this can be a big one whenever we went over all these different service points when we're changing these filters. For engine oil, you're going to be looking at 1.4 gallons. These diesel engines are going to be great on 15W40. The plus 52 John Deere engine oil is what I would suggest. And then in your transmission and hydraulic fluid, what you're going to be looking at is 12.5 gallons. And there I would suggest the John Deere High Guard. These are all things that you can get at 247parts.com. So keep that in mind, as long with as all of the filters that you're going to need for this machine. Now, the top RPM, or the operating RPM that you want to be at to make sure and obtain that 51 horsepower, is going to be 2600 RPM. And there will be a little spot there on your RPM gauge to let you know when you are at that optimum RPM for this tractor. Now, as far as warranty goes, what you're going to get on these tractors is going to be a 2-year bumper to bumper, along with a 6-year powertrain, meaning for your engine and transmission. But you do also have the option, whenever you're looking at one of these tractors, to go ahead and extend that bumper to bumper out all the way out to that 6 years, like your powertrain is, to give you that full protection for the full length of that term. So guys, I hope you liked this video. I hope this video helped you out, and if it did, we just ask that you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also guys, if you're looking for any of those John Deere parts like I was talking about, make sure to go check us out, 247parts.com. And as always guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, make sure to check out this cool video and this one. Buy your parts right up here and subscribe right here.